Britain's war dead. At 11 o'clock this morning, people across the country paused for 2 minutes to mark Armistice Day.
If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England.
Also tonight, more anti-Trump demonstrations in America as the president-elect praises the passion of protesters.
Tributes to those lost in the Croydon tram crash and...
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Remembering a songwriting legend, Leonard Cohen dies at 82.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Natasha Kaplinsky.
Good evening. Across the country and across the generations today, people paused in silent tribute to mark the moment the guns fell silent at the end of the First World War. Veterans and royalty joined events at memorials, schools and other public buildings to hold 2-minute silence at 11 o'clock in honour of all those who have died in conflict.
There was added poignancy at the National Memorial Arboretum where Prince Harry paid tribute. A frontline veteran himself, he read the famous lines from the poem The Soldier by Rupert Brooke. Rebecca Barry now on how the nation remembered.
As the winter sun crept into Whitehall, they marched, resolute, respectful and loyal. Those too young and those who still remember, all here to reflect. And 98 years since the guns of the Western Front fell silent, so did they. Prince Harry was at the National Memorial Arboretum. He too knows the reality of life on the front line, twice deployed to Afghanistan.
If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. There shall be in that rich earth a richer dust concealed.
And in Lincoln, children learnt about those who died fighting for their futures.
I think it's important because I want them to remember all this and just know what they did for us.
But this year, the Royal British Legion wants us to also remember the veterans of more recent conflicts. Gell served in the Royal Regiment of Artillery, but struggled to adjust to civilian life until the Legion helped him retrain.
I didn't know which way to turn. When I asked, the help was there and it came in abundance, you know, and it set me off on a whole new life.
At a time when much in the world feels unpredictable, it seems more pertinent than ever that we remember those who died in the pursuit of peace and stability. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
In the United States, President Obama laid a wreath at the Arlington National Cemetery on his final Veterans Day in office. With the election in mind, he spoke of America's need to find strength among their diversity, not division.
But there was little sign of that unity overnight, with more violent protests against the election of Donald Trump, as our Washington correspondent Robert Moore reports.
What must he be thinking? On this Veterans Day, the president was paying tribute to America's fallen soldiers. But he knows the election of Donald Trump abruptly brings down the curtain on his reforms at home and his cautiously calibrated foreign policy. A presidency that began amid such staggering expectations is ending with the likelihood his legacy will be erased in the opening days of a Trump administration. Donald Trump in the Oval Office yesterday was the start of the transition of power. And the president-elect is promising to act quickly in filling the key cabinet and national security jobs. The wave of protests is continuing in different cities, mainly on the West Coast. It is striking that these are small scale, involving a few hundred people, and not huge marches. The police were forced to intervene in Oregon when one anti-Trump gathering threatened to get out of control.
And I couldn't bear the thought of her being in detention and a deportation.
Immigrant groups fear that Trump's promises of mass deportations may be the new reality. And one Muslim American woman told me she's already faced increased threats since the election.
I just want to be heard. I want to know that when I go to work or when I won't be spit at or punched at, because on my way here, I was actually punched at.
How did you feel when you saw those images of President-elect Trump in the Oval Office?
Very, very scared for my rights, for my friends' rights, for everybody in America.
The question now is, how can Donald Trump's opponents mobilize? The Democratic Party is in shock and disarray. It is also without a leader. The Obama years are now over, and very few people in this town have any grasp of what the next 4 years will bring. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
UKIP's Nigel Farage has denied reports that he'll act as a go-between for Downing Street and his friend Donald Trump. However, he did tell ITV News that he's hoping to meet with members of Trump's team tomorrow, although not the president-elect himself. Our political correspondent Libby Wiener is in Westminster this evening. Libby, you've spoken to Mr Farage. What is he hoping to do exactly in Washington?
Well, whatever remains of the special relationship, Nigel Farage clearly thinks that he has a special relationship with Donald Trump. He's currently in Florida, and he told me he was flying up to New York tonight and was arranging to meet some of Trump's team, although he downplayed the idea, as you suggested, that he would meet President-elect Trump himself. Suggestions, though, that he's acting as some sort of go-between, well, they've been dismissed out of hand. I think the fact that he made some rather crude remarks in a radio interview yesterday about the fact that Theresa May might need the protection of an adult when Mr Trump visited Downing Street won't have gone unnoticed in number 10. Nevertheless, the wheels of diplomacy are turning. Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, who last year suggested that Mr Trump was unfit to hold office, seems to have changed his tune.
And I may respectfully say to some of my beloved European friends and colleagues that I think it's time we snapped out of the general doom and gloom about the result of this election and the collective windorama that seems to be going on in some places.
Well, it may be easy to say nice things about the president-elect now, but I think there is genuine concern in Whitehall about what Mr Trump might do in office, whether he will turn his back on NATO, as he has suggested, and free trade. I think there's concern as to what the reality will bring, whether it really was just campaign rhetoric or not.
All right, Libby, thank you very much indeed.
Well, our Washington correspondent Robert Moore joins us now. So, Robert, at the end of an extraordinary week, what are we learning about a Trump presidency?
Well, we had our first indication last night. This could be a wild and unconventional ride. This could be a sort of presidency by tweet, because last night Donald Trump took to Twitter to accuse those protesters of being professional agitators, and he then accused us, the media, of inciting them. Now, there's no evidence either of that is true, so as people are pointing out, that's two probable falsehoods by the president-elect in a single tweet. And he then, in a case of rather great whiplash, that sort of changed his mind, and on Twitter he said that he actually admired those protesters for their passion. The key test, though, is going to be those early appointments, you know, the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State and the Treasury Secretary. Does he turn to those kind of on the conspiratorial fringes of American politics, or does he try and get mainstream candidates maybe from who are outsiders, from industry or from commerce? I think only then will we know quite in what direction we're heading.
Robert, thank you.
Right, still to come on the ITV Evening News. We're live at Wembley as England prepare to take on Scotland and...
Remembering the life and legacy of the visionary songwriter Leonard Cohen. Those stories and more after the break. Hello again, welcome back. Police investigating the Croydon tram crash say they're looking into reports that another tram nearly derailed at the same spot last week. Family and friends of the 7 victims visited the scene today as work continued to remove the wreckage. Some want to know why the names of those who died still haven't been confirmed. Richard Pallow reports.
2 days on, and only now can many summon the strength to come here. Supporting one another, the family and friends of the 7 victims visited the scene all day. Many still wanting answers from the police over what happened here, and in several cases, why the identities have not been confirmed yet. Among those now feared dead, a 57-year-old grandfather, Philip Siri, Dorota Rynkiewicz, a Polish lady who's lived here for many years and has daughters aged 7 and 5, and Mark Smith, a young father who was planning his wedding in just a couple of months' time. Mark's good friend Jay was running nearby at the time and heard the crash and had no idea he was aboard.
Mark was perfect. He was the nicest, kindest, genuine man that I kind of come across. If you needed something, Mark would give it to you.
Cranes have been moved into place during the day, ready to remove the carriages in the next few hours. They have already been brought upright. Meanwhile, British Transport Police are investigating an online post from another commuter last week, which said that a different tram on the same route lifted onto its side at 40 miles an hour. It is forming one of the main lines in this inquiry, whether the derailing, which has torn so many lives apart, could have been avoided. And as for Wednesday's accident, well, police are still working on the theory that the tram was travelling significantly quicker than permitted and that the driver may have fallen asleep, and that speed is going to be a crucial component of the interim report, which is out as early as next week. As for the next few hours, I'm told by officers the carriages, both of them, will be removed overnight. They'll be taken to a local depot where assessors can look more fully at what's gone on there.
Richard, thank you. Police say they do not believe a schoolgirl reportedly raped in Oxford in September was abducted. The 14-year-old told detectives she was forced into a car by 2 men. They are still investigating whether she was raped, but have not made any arrests.
Former Chancellor George Osborne has been made a member of the Order of the Companions of Honour by the Duke of Cambridge at Buckingham Palace. The honour for political and public service was part of David Cameron's much criticised resignation honours list.
And former England manager Sam Allardyce has welcomed news that he will not face the police investigation into allegations of corruption in football. Meanwhile, the City of London police have begun a separate criminal investigation into one case of suspected bribery, but they say does not involve him.
And staying with football, and England entertained Scotland tonight in a World Cup qualifier that could prove pivotal for both managers. England's Gareth Southgate wants the job permanently, but it could be Gordon Strachan's last match in charge of Scotland. There's also the small matter of both teams defying a FIFA ban on poppies. Our sports editor Steve Scott is at Wembley tonight. Steve, quite a build-up to this game.
Yeah, a very high-profile build-up. That's because it means so much tonight to so many people, for so many different reasons. For the fans, this fixture is always important, but there's an extra edge tonight because this is the first time in 17 years that these two countries have played each other in a competitive fixture. For the managers, it's important for two very different reasons. I think if England avoid defeat to Scotland tonight, then clearly Gareth Southgate is going to be offered the England's manager's job full-time. For Gordon Strachan, though, if he fails to leave Wembley with anything, it's pretty likely that questions will be asked about whether he's the right man to lead Scotland going forward. And then, of course, it's very important for both FAs too, especially after they sanctioned their players to wear black armbands with poppies on them for the fixture tonight, in defiance of FIFA. Now, they say they're on pretty good, safe, legal ground because they don't think that the armbands that the players are going to be wearing tonight constitute a political symbol, and they will fight any sanction if indeed FIFA hands out a sanction. So yes, it's a football match, but tonight I think more than ever it's worth more than 3 points.
All right, Steve, thanks very much indeed. And you can see all the action live here on ITV. Coverage starts at 7:15. Highlights of that and Northern Ireland's qualifier against Azerbaijan are at 10:45 tonight.
And finally tonight, Leonard Cohen, one of the world's most revered and influential singer-songwriters, has died at the age of 82. Born in Canada, he turned to song to make ends meet after his poetry failed to sell.
He went on to enjoy a 50-year career with his haunting bass voice and a brooding lyrics, leading many to call him a visionary. Nina Nana on the artist who touched so many people's hearts and minds.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
He may have brought us one of the most popular anthems of our time, but he was first and foremost a poet.
Like a bird on the wire.
With a voice that got more deep and gravelly with age, Leonard Cohen had a sound that was all his own.
I have tried in my way. Yes, Suzanne takes you down.
For 6 decades, he would write books, release albums, disappear from view, on one occasion to become a Buddhist monk for 5 years, and then re-emerge to make his fans swoon.
And bring it to me now.
In 2008, Leonard Cohen chose the Webb Sisters, 2 British folk singers, to join his band for his first tour in 15 years. Being on stage with him was, they said, unforgettable.
We really did become a family over the 6 years, so it was a time that we shan't forget.
He was actually such a funny person, and his joie de vivre and his funny emails and kind, thoughtful messages will be something that I know both of us will really miss.
His heart in my hand is heavy as lead.
Cohen emerged in the 60s as a poet and novelist, a contemporary of Bob Dylan, turning to music to make more money. Decades later, X Factor winner Alexandra Burke sang Alleluia, and Cohen found himself headlining at Glastonbury.
Baby, I've been here before.
A lovely bloke, he really was. And when he played here in 2008, it really was the best thing, one of the best things really that ever happened here.
Cohen released his last album just 3 weeks ago. In poor health, he would say he was ready for death. This revered man of words, the world wasn't ready to lose him.
Leonard Cohen, who has died aged 82.
And that is it for now. Nina Hussain will be here with news at 10.
Apart from all the team here, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.